Hi guys, how are you? I hope you're doing good. So, welcome back to our weekly recap, right? On all potential setups that actually played out within the week of 14 October to 18 October, right? So, on this video, I'm actually going to be looking at all possible setups that actually played out within this week, right? So, I'm just going to be analyzing using the strategy that I use on a day-to-day basis, right? So, the thing is, I'm just going to be pointing out or showing you all the potential setups, right? The high probability setups that actually played out within this week, right? And we are actually looking at GBPUSD, right? British pound um, versus US dollar, right? So if you can see from the chart, there are some details there that I've already uh, put, right? Showing you whatever that I was actually expecting, right? So this was on Monday, right? Monday open Monday Asian session open, right? So if you can look with whatever that was actually happening before then, you can actually see that there's we have actually been consolidating within two zones during this time, right? So this, right, just a moment, right, between this zone, right, and this zone. So it's more like a consolidation that was happening since this price ended between these two zones, right? This market is actually been consolidating. But if you can see with what was happening there, sales were actually in motion, which means the most important thing that we could actually be expecting looking at these structures is looking for getting more of sales, right? So coming back to this point where the market, right, right, coming back to the point where the market opened here on Monday, right, you can definitely see that when the session opened, GBPUSD, it had to give some sales, right, going to that support zone down here, right? So this is more like a zone of rejection. If you can see how it has been reacting, right, to the price action, it was actually respecting these two zones, right? So looking at this structure, since we've been dropping to the downside, you can definitely see that there was a break of structure here, right? There was a break of structure here, what that was actually created, right? That was created when this session opened, right? So this was a break of structure created here, with a break of structure created. And looking at the structures, we had a zone of supply, right? So this was more like a zone of supply, right? This was like a zone of supply. But looking at this point, you can definitely see that when we broke below this lows here on this structure, there was a market shift structure that was created here, right? There was a market shift structure created, and then the market came back, respected this imbalance and dropped to the downside, which means this was also going to be a potential sell setup, right? When this session started, when the market opened here, this was a great potential sell setup, right? But most of the times we usually look for setups during London and New York session, right? So if you can see with what happened here, this was exactly around 8:30 in the morning, right? We have already seen that these structures, they're imposing more of sales, right? So looking at this was the most immediate and important area of interest, right? This was the most immediate area of interest. We're definitely going to be focusing with this supply on this structure, right? We're definitely going to be focusing with this supply on this structure, right? So if we can even take our Fibonacci, place it on that highest point, and then place it on this lowest point, right? You can actually see that this market actually respected the 71, 79%, right, retracement level on our Fibonacci there, right? Which is the first reason for us to look for genuine entries or major entries around this area, right? So this was the first setup that actually played after the Asian session closing, right? So 8:30, that's where the London session opens, right? So if you can see with what was actually happening here, right, around 7:30 in the morning, right, South African time, the market started rallying towards these areas of interest, right? So this was the first potential sell, right, on Monday, and it was actually possibly giving you a risk to reward ratio of 1:2, looking at this rejection zone, right? So if you can see when they came, they just broke below this rejection zone, came above, right? And then they started what? Buying once we're actually moving to the following day, right? To Tuesday. So if you can also look at the Asian session, right? So during New York here, there was a possibility for buying, right? Because you could have taken an advantage of the rejections here. If the market gave a bullish engulfing candle, right, back into the zone, right? This was a retest on that structure, and maybe you could have taken entries at this point, right? But this was not something that I was actually going to be paying attention to, because we actually have an imbalance here, right? We actually have an imbalance here that we are actually seeing there. This was an imbalance, and if you can see, there was also a change of market character here. We went above, right, and then later on we even came back for that imbalance. You could have taken an entry the time they came back to test this zone, right? The time they came back to test this zone, the time they came back to test this zone, or you could have waited for them to come again and tap twice, and then maybe you might be looking for an entry at this point, putting a stop loss below this structure, and then maybe getting a 1:2 risk to reward ratio. So it could have come back again to this support, right? To this support structure and closer to your stop loss, but it could have also given you a 1:2 approaching into the Asian session. So you've actually never seen me holding trades up until maybe around Asian session. So it's rare. I usually take my trades during London, unless if I'm swinging. Let's say maybe I'm just gonna be holding that trade for quite some time, right? Sorry about that, right? So the thing is, this was the setup, right, that we could have gotten during the London session, right? And then looking at the following day, this was the Asian session box that I did mark here, right? To see if we're definitely going to be having what? A potential for some sales there, right? So if you can see with whatever that was happening here, right? The strategy didn't actually allow us to get an entry in time, right? So if you can look at this was also actually a possibility for us to get a buy to that zone up there. But with the way these structures were actually created here, this didn't actually manage to break above this level, right? So to me, this could have appeared like it's a continuation for us to drop down, right? So here there was no setup that actually played out, right, on this day, on Tuesday, right? There was no setup that actually played out, right? And then coming to Wednesday, you can definitely see that there was a huge movement, and this movement was exactly around 8 o'clock. The market dropped to the downside, and this was CPI, right? This was pound CPI. The market had to rally and drop to the downside. So looking at these structures, there was nothing much enticing for me to possibly look for sales, because the way they were hanging up around these levels, this could have been a flip zone, and this market could have even shifted and pushed to the upside, right? So this wasn't much of the thing that I was actually paying attention to. I actually ignored these, right? And then the market actually gave some good sales here. It actually gave some good sales, broke this level, right? And then went as further as to the downside, continuing with what? With the downtrend, the selling pattern, since we've been seeing this asset giving some sales, right? And then looking at Thursday, you can definitely see that since this market broke below this support structure, right? Somehow it was still enforcing some structures for sales, right? Where they pull back towards, right, that zone, and then we started creating some structures going down there. There was a break of structure here created, but somehow we come to a point where we actually see a market shift structure here. Right, this was a market shift structure, and this market was actually preparing a pattern for what? For some buys going upwards, right? And if you can see, this would have been an opportunity for taking buys here. But what I actually paid attention to here, I was actually looking at the structure and seeing that, okay, if this asset tend to go up somehow, it has to actually sell before it actually goes up, right? So this was a bearish order block within the structure. And if you can see with what happened here, it actually came, respected this order block, and then it rallied down, coming to the imbalance and this bullish order block here. So if you can see, it actually respected the bullish order block, which means around New York session, this was also going to be a potential of what? For buys. You could have sold during London session, right? Sorry, during this was also towards it was actually New York Open when this sales played out, right? And you could have even sold and even bought also at once, right? But for you just adhering to the 1:2 risk to reward ratio, this is what you could have just also paid attention to, take your sales and then move out, right? So if you can see, even whenever the buys were being created here, the market was actually not giving you call it what the good liquidity, right? The good liquidity movement. It was not actually giving a good volatile movement like what happened here. It was just a matter of 3 15-minute candles going towards your target, right? So this was a quick setup, right? And then looking at this setup on Friday, right? This was actually during the London session, right? So you can definitely see that if we come take our Fibonacci 2, put it on that highest point, put the 0% on the lowest point, it came as far as 79%, right? It came as far as 79%, filling this imbalance that was created here, right? So if you are to come and put it on this highest point, you see that it actually respected the 71% level, right? It actually respected the 71% level, pullback level there, right? Actually, the retracement level there, it was actually respected. So this was an opportunity again around the London Open, right? Around London Open, this was a good initiative sale that we're actually going to be taking, right? And this was also going to be giving you something like a 1:2 risk to reward ratio, right? So within this week, there were actually 3 good setups, right? That actually played out according to the strategy. So thank you guys for sticking up until to this end. So I'm definitely going to be doing more of these videos, right? So that you are also going to be learning a lot from how I can also be looking at the markets, and you can also definitely benefit from that. So thank you guys for sticking up until to this end.